Well, I went to town today and got the hardware to put these wingtip bow brackets on the end of the spars, and I got those installed. I put stainless steel hardware on there. Now it calls for just nuts and lock washers and several washers on there, but what I did instead is I put washers on there, and then I got self-locking nuts, and then of course I've coated everything with peralkatone, anti-corrosion grease stuff there. Shouldn't have a problem for 20 years or after 20 years there with that. I've got peralkatone against the spar itself and in between the bracket and the spar, and then on each one of the screws, and of course then I put some on the outside after I got done. So that's the outboard one there. Here's the inboard one. Did the same thing there, or the rear spar, I guess I should say. Well, that's good. Then I got these outboard aileron hinge and the inboard flap hinge nailed on to their respective false spars, and I went ahead and bolted them up to the rear spar, and I've got this outboard false spar, outboard aileron false spar all screwed down. I still got to turn it over and screw down the top side of it, but so far I've got it all screwed down. There was a couple of the holes there that I put new holes in them and put new screws in them because these spun. There's two of them there like that. That is on, and of course I've got peralkatone on everything there. There's the nut. Probably should get some peralkatone and coat that a little bit better. A little more wouldn't hurt any. Some's good, more's better, as the saying goes. And we'll come down here to the inboard end. Well, the first thing I did was put that bracket on there for the flap bell crank, and then I put these fuel tank straps on. I cleaned them up first and then put some new felt on them and put those on where they go. I got everything all gooped up good with peralkatone. Almost got caught on these. The bends on these straps are different on the rear spar and the front spar. The bends are deeper on the front spar, so it got caught on that almost. Got to looking at it after I put the first strap in there, and it hung down a lot farther than it should have, so I realized right away they were different on each end. Anyway, those are bolted up there and got lots of goop on those. This is some fiberglass Teflon tape. I went ahead and cut some strips of that and put over the spar underneath where these straps go so that they're not rubbing directly on metal or steel on aluminum. Did that on each one of them here. Well, anyway, those are all on, gooped up real good, new felt on them. See, here's the tape here on this one. And I went ahead and put this inboard flap false spar on. That was a little bit of a challenge. I don't have it buttoned up yet. I've still got to put the screws and stuff in it, and that takes different screws. All those other false spars just screw on with number 4 1/4" PK screws, but these out here use PK screws here and here, but then they use machine screws and nuts here in these spots. So I've got to dig out some machine screws and nuts for those and get those put on, but haven't done that yet. But I got it all in there, and I got that bell crank in there mounted up, and like I said, that spring is one of the new style springs, and there was nothing wrong with it. I cleaned up a little bit of the paint and stuff off of it, just put a little bit of peralkatone on it to keep it from rusting up, hopefully. Got it installed. So that's done. The only thing I got left to do on that is to finish screwing that down, finish buttoning that up, and then of course turn it over and get the screws in on the other side. So that makes me happy. Anyway, that's done. So the next step here is to work on this wingtip bow. I want to make sure, like I said before, that they're dried out really good before I put the varnish on them. But I can go ahead and fit it up to the wingtip now and get it trimmed down to size. The trailing edge of it's got to be tapered down. And so I'll work on getting that done. And it's pretty dry in here. I've got heat on, and it's 65 degrees or so in here now. It's warmed up outside, so temperature in here is picked up a lot. And I've got dehumidifier going in here, so the humidity in the basement is pretty low. So that thing should dry out pretty good. If I give it another day or two to dry out, but it'll take me, tomorrow I'll work on getting that thing fitted up to size. And then I can probably mix the varnish and put on it. Alright, that's enough for one night. I had this inboard false flap pretty much installed last night. I got all of the bell crank in for the flap hinge and all of that kind of stuff. But I didn't have any screws. It takes a number 6 screw and nut on those on the bottom of them to finish them up. So I went down and dug out some machine screws and nuts, finished those up. And then this morning I had my son help me turn this wing over so it's top side up. Now I've got it all buttoned up here. This is the inboard false spar. And here's the outboard false spar down here. There wasn't much left to do on it. I just had to put, 3 or 4 screws in here into this thing and to go into the ribs, tail of the ribs. Oh, I did put a rivet in here. There's one rivet that goes in to one of the ribs, the tail end of the ribs here, and I had to put that in. I had to go find a bucking bar that would fit in there between the rib and this hinge. Then I've been working on this wingtip bow. That's got to get it done before I can put the leading edge skins on. And we're leaving the end of this coming week, so it doesn't leave me much time to get everything done here. I've got to get that on and mounted up, put the leading edge skins on, and then I can paint the leading edge skins and the false bars with a polyfiber 2-part epoxy primer that's glue resistant, or proof I guess is a better word for it. Anyway, I've been working on this bow. I had it set up in there in the wing overnight and had it fitted up pretty good. So today this trailing edge of it needs to be tapered down to a 1/2 inch wide. So I got out a little block plane and sharpened it up, and I tapered that trailing edge down. This has still got to be cut off right up about here, but I leave that on because it's easier to handle that way to get it pulled in where it's got to go to get bolted in. So anyway, got that done. Marked and drilled some holes for it. It takes a groove up here in the front where it goes into the aileron, outboard aileron rib. So I've got that cut in there. And I just wiped it down with some paint thinner to get all the dust and fingerprints and stuff like that off of it. So it's a little bit dark. I sanded it down all the way to get any marks. See, there's some marks here where there were saw marks for ripping this out. There's 2 or 3 of those spots, and they could potentially be a weak spot. So I sanded those down smooth, and then I rounded over the edge here with the sandpaper just a little bit, so it's not a sharp edge like it was. Sanded down, smoothed it down, took off any splinters or anything that were on there that didn't get stuck in my hand. Anyway, I've got it hanging up ready to put some varnish on it, and I just mixed up a little bit of polyfiber 2-part epoxy varnish. Got to let it inoculate, dwell, whatever the term is on that, catalyze for a while before we use it. So I'm going to head back down to the cabin right now and maybe get some dinner, and then I'll come up a little while later tonight, brush a coat of the varnish on there. I've got to thin it down with some reducer first and get it pretty thin. I put the first coat on really thin so it pulls into the wood, and then we'll put multiple coats on top of that. And that'll be dry. It says dry enough to after 4 or 5 hours, something like that, dry enough to handle. So I guess once it's dry enough to handle, I can put that on. It takes 7 days for it to dry, to finish drying, but it's not going to be covered up in that length of time. So I can get that on, buttoned down, and then I can start putting those leading edge skins on maybe tomorrow or the next day. I came up here last night a couple of times and put the varnish on that wingtip bow. I think I put 2 coats on. They're kind of heavy. Put them on with a little brush. I didn't have the right kind of brush, so I dug out an acid brush out of Judy's stash. I had a little bit of trouble with it because the bristles kept coming out of it. I forgot about my little trick of gluing them in with super glue. I finally did that with one of them and it worked better. I dug most of the bristles out. Kind of redid it. I got it on there pretty heavy. Let it sit all night long and it cured up. Well, it's not cured up enough yet to put the polytack on and start putting the fabric on, but it was cured up enough to handle. It's still a little tacky, not sticky, but soft. It says it takes 7 days for that to cure up, but it cured up enough for me to put it on here. So it's on there now. I got it all screwed down. I still need to put in some of the braces that go in there. This brace here, I got to put a screw in it, and I got to put the other braces in the wing tip itself. And then I've got to cut this tag end off here where the aileron goes, the outboard aileron rib. It shows in the plans, it shows in the drawings and stuff for the Cub, and that other wing had it, that this outboard aileron rib has extended metal coming out that you wrap around that wingtip bow there and put on with some nails. The other rib had been used so many times that those just cracked off of there. So I made up a little piece of metal to wrap around that bow and to screw into this rib on both sides of it. I think I'll do that one on this one too. There's a lot of tension in that bow pulling it out, and I've got a bolt. Actually, I went ahead and put a number 8 bolt and lock nut on that instead of the 6 bolt that the plans call for. Anyway, that's on there. Like I said, I got to put those diagonal struts back in there, those braces in, get those screwed on. But now I can start putting the leading edge skins on. Well, that's the next step, is putting the leading edge skins on. So I countersunk all these holes and got the screws down in there tight. I'm still impressed with this oak, how it reacts to screws and stuff as opposed to what I'm used to, the softwoods I'm used to. They would have pulled right through there. That oak is really tough and nice. But anyway, I counterbored those out, or countersunk those out, and recessed them in a ways. And then I went ahead and took some more of the varnish and filled in those holes. I drilled those holes out before I started varnishing, so I got varnish down in the holes, but I countersunk those out deeper when I put the screws in, and in the raw wood there I went ahead and put varnish in there on those. And probably put some filler or something in each one of those holes to fill them in. So I guess I better get busy and put those diagonal struts, those struts in there, and then I can put this outboard wingtip on there and then start putting the leading edge covers on. I finished getting that wingtip bow attached. I got the diagonals on there and everything all screwed on it. And then I put that outboard wingtip skin on there, the wingtip. That was kind of a challenge because it didn't exactly fit the bow the way it was, the new bow. So took some finagling to get it on there, but I got it on there okay. And once I got it on there, then I started putting the rest of these skins on. I got the neck skin on, and then I put the foreskin on, and the 3 skin, and the 2 skin, and I started to put the inboard skin on, and then I realized I wanted to do a little bit of a modification to it. Now, it's got there's a latch for the door, the upper door half, that goes into the inboard leading edge skin. And when I redid the fuselage, the new door that I had on the fuselage, the latch wouldn't fit on it. So I fixed up a different system for a latch. I got a bungee cord screwed on with a couple of crimp-on electrical fasteners and screwed into the same holes. But those holes are just holes in the sheet metal for sheet metal screws. And they work fine so far. But I thought as long as I had that skin off of there, I'd go ahead and put a doubler on there and maybe put a nut plate. Now I got 2 different styles of nut plates I can use. I can use a regular machine screw nut plate, or I have some of the spring steel nut plates that are used for sheet metal screws. I was thinking about putting a doubler plate on there with machine screw nut plates on, machine screw nut plates on there, some number 6 nut plates on there. And that would be a lot better than just having the sheet metal ones on there. So I went ahead, and I was just starting to put that one on when I remembered that I had wanted to do that. So I took it off and got it sit over on the bench, and I'll work on that. But right now I've got all the screws in the top side of the leading edge here. The sheet metal screws that go into the ribs. Right now I'm putting these Z screws, I think what they are. I keep calling them B screws, but I think they call them Z screws. These call them a type B pan head, Phillips head tapping screw, number 4, 1/4 inch. It's the same thing as what I took out of there though, and I think they call it in the plans a Z screw or something like that. But anyway, I'm putting those back in. I took all those out, and the ones I took out of there were steel. These are steel, but they're black oxide coated, so they're more rust resistant. And then I'm putting a little bit of anti-seize compound on them when I put them in. I don't know why I'm being so picky about what I'm doing here, because I'm not going to be the one that ever has to take this apart again, but I guess that's just the way I am. And I know how hard it was. I mean, these are liable to get some of them that freeze in there anyway, like I did with the ones I took out of there. Had to drill out, but it's sure heck a lot nicer to take those out when they come out on their own. And this anti-seize with these phosphate-coated screws should help them not seize up in there. So whoever takes this thing apart next time, 20, 30 years, whenever that is, that this thing gets taken apart, hopefully it doesn't get taken apart because it gets wrecked. It gets taken apart because it's time to check it out and do some maintenance on it or recover it or whatever. But if I do this right, maybe it doesn't ever have to come apart, except for if it just gets a new fabric on it. You don't need to take the whole thing apart for that. Anyway, that's what I'm doing right now, is putting those screws into that wing spar on the top side. I was hoping I'd have this all back together when my son came back from walking the dogs, so I could work on the bottom side of it, get him help me flip this wing over and work on the bottom side of it. But I don't think I'm going to get that done now. By the time I get a doubler plate and get that inboard leading edge skin put back on there, he's probably going to be done with his dog walking exercise for the day. And he's got to work tomorrow, so he's not going to want to hang around here too long. I bought a new #1 Phillips head screwdriver. These things wear out, and the ones that I've got are snap-on, and they're not that good for these number 4 screws. They're too sharp. I don't know whether they're Phillips head or if they're Robertsons or what they are, but anyway, they don't work as good. The best one that I found is this one that's a Klein tool one that I've had for years, and that works a lot better than the snap-on ones, but it's starting to get worn too. Once you spin these screw heads a little bit, it don't take much for them to wear out. So I went to buy a new one, and by God, you can't hardly find a #1 Phillips head screwdriver. I mean, I probably go to town and get one, but I get a decent one, a good one. I mean, the whole point of buying one is get a good one. I've traded the snap-on ones in a couple different times whenever I got a chance to get around a snap-on dealer, and they still don't work. Even the brand new ones don't work that good. But this Klein one works really good. So I did find a Klein one on Amazon, but they didn't have a standard length, a 6-inch length one. So I got this, what is that, a foot? Oh, this is a gear wrench, not a Klein. Anyway, the gear wrench one seems to be working pretty good. Wasn't too sure about that. I got that leading edge skin all on there and all buttoned down. All the screws in the right place, all the ribs lined up the way they're supposed to be and everything. I had to drill one little rib out and move one little screw down there on the foreskin. Otherwise, they all went right back in the same holes. And then I got the Z screws or B screws back into the wing spar, and those all went really good. I think I had to drill out one extra hole there for one screw that wouldn't stay in, but I got a new screw in there and it's holding down tight. So anyway, that all looks good, except for down there on the wingtip. That wingtip didn't quite fit on there the same way with that wingtip bow, or maybe I tried too hard to make it fit right or something, but anyway, I kind of made a hash out of that. Well, anyway, it's all on there and all together, and it looks really good. I could probably get by with it the way it is, but I still have a couple little dings in the leading edge, primarily on that foreskin, and now out down there on that wing tip, like on the top of this #2 skin here. Well, I'll mix up some body putty tomorrow and start working on those to get those smoothed out. I got most of the dent out of that foreskin and out of that 2 skin. with the skins off. I pushed them out pretty good and did some body work on them and got them out pretty good, but there's still some little dimples in there and stuff. So tomorrow I'll go ahead and work on that, mix the body putty up and start trying to smooth that stuff out. But it's time to quit for the night. It's just a little bit after midnight. I'm used to working up here late like this, but I got to start getting my time turned around here a little bit. We're heading down to Florida the end of this coming week. I guess this is this week now because today's Sunday. Well, it's Monday now. Anyway, on Thursday, we leave here, go to Seattle, and then on Friday, we go down to Florida, and there's a 4-hour time difference, and we got appointments in the mornings and stuff down there. I'm not a morning person anyway, so anyway, I'm going to have to start getting my get-up time and stuff like that switched around here so I can function while we're down there in Florida. Well, anyway, that wing is back together, the structural part of it. Now we just got to do a little bit of cleanup work on it and get that body putty done on it. And then I can paint those leading edges and the false bars to get them ready for the glue. And then when we come back from Florida, I can put the fabric on there. It takes 7 days for that varnish to set up to where you could put glue on it. And the same thing with that paint. Once I put it on there, it takes 3 or 4 days. The longer it sets up, the more glue resistant it's going to be. 3 weeks or more by the time we get all done with all the stuff we got to do down there in Florida. So it should be good and ready for glue and fabric when we get back anyway. Well, anyway, that's enough for tonight. That's enough for one day. I'm going to put this away and go down to the house and maybe sit and have a little drink of water and relax a little bit, brush my teeth and stuff, and get ready for bed.